Hello, today we're going to look at David Hume, one of my favourite philosophers. We're going to specifically look at how we gain knowledge according to David Hume. Here he is, the great man himself. Let's get into it. Okay, so it's important to remember David Hume's an empiricist. He comes close on the heels of John Locke. He was very impressed, as many people were at the time, by the discoveries of Isaac Newton and the laws of physics. And Hume was really hoping to do similar kind of work on the mind. It's important to understand that a lot of Hume's project, if we like, is descriptive. He's trying to explain how the mind works. And there's been some confusion, I think, about Hume, and people don't understand that. He's really puzzled about how the mind works, and he's trying to explain that, more than he's trying often to even give philosophical justifications about things that we might be puzzled over. His real question is, how come the mind works the way it does? So remember, empiricism claims that knowledge and ideas come from sense experience. Empiricism is the belief that all our knowledge of the external world comes from our sense experience, and that all knowledge of relations of ideas can be known a priori. So remember, a priori means looking at the ideas in the mind without having to attend to anything outside. We need to add to this thesis the claim that we only have ideas that have been imprinted on the mind through sense experience. Right? If you remember back to Locke in the tabula rasa, it's the idea that to have an idea, to have a sensation, it must be imprinted on the mind from the outside. There's some technical terms worth knowing, which I'm going to go through. I'm just going to say the words, and then I'm going to talk about them individually afterwards. The important words are perception, impressions, ideas, sensation, and reflection. So what are perceptions? Well, for Hume, perceptions can be anything before or in the mind. It can be split into perceptions of sensation, impressions, seeing something, for example, or perceptions of reflection, ideas and thoughts. So sensations, for example, are something like seeing red. Okay, sensations of impressions of sensation, seeing red. Reflection on the man is reflecting on how you feel. So, like, you might feel angry or hungry or tired or whatever it might be. That's an internal sensation. So Hume quoted, "Here therefore we may divide all perceptions of the mind into two classes or species, which are distinguished by their different degrees of force and vivacity. The less forcible and lively are commonly denominated thoughts or ideas. The other species we will call impressions." So remember, impressions are things right before the mind, in front of it, lively, forceful, and clear. Ideas are copies of those impressions. They're less forceful and they're less lively, and we'll look at that. Think of seeing a statue in a museum, and then think of bringing that image back to the mind at a later time. Now, some people have very good memory, but it's usually clear, less powerful, right? The image that will come back to your mind is less clear, less vivid, and less lively. Another way of thinking about that is hearing music in a live concert, and then actually hearing or trying to bring it back to your mind afterwards. It's just not the same. So impressions are lively and forceful. This can be the experience of a colour, sensation, or of anger or feeling. Ideas are less lively and vivacious, copies of impressions. So everyone can readily agree that there is a considerable difference between the perceptions of the mind when a man feels the pain of excessive heat or the pleasure of moderate warmth, and when he afterwards recalls to his memory this sensation or anticipates it by his imagination. These faculties may mimic or copy the perceptions of the senses, but they can never entirely reach the force and vivacity of the original sentiment. Again, we may observe a like distinction to run through all of the other perceptions of the mind. A man in a fit of anger is actuated by a very different manner from one who only thinks of that emotion. Now, Hume does admit that, if you're ill, if you've maybe taken a drug, you can have very powerful sensations and ideas, but generally that's not the case. Okay, so let's look at the structure of this. So you have perceptions. Perceptions are in the mind. Perceptions are equivalent to, but can be understood in two different ways, in two different forms. They're impressions of things outside the mind, colours, objects, so on and so forth, and then impressions of things inside the mind, feelings, and so on and so forth. Now, what happens is when the mind's presented with these impressions, it can make copies of them, right? So you can remember yourself being angry. Remember, it's never the same. When you think back to your previous anger, it always feels a lot less lively, a lot less vivid. And you can, of course, as I've said, bring an image back of something you've seen before in the past, and that again is usually less forceful and less likely to have the same effect as the original one. So, and the Treatise of Human Nature says, there is another division of our perceptions, which it will be convenient to observe, and which extends itself to our impressions and ideas. This division is into simple and complex. Simple perceptions or impressions and ideas are such as to admit of no distinction or separation. The complex are the contrary of these, and may be distinguished into parts. And then he says, though a particular colour, taste and smell are qualities all united together in this apple, 'tis easy to perceive these are not the same, but are at least distinguishable from each other. So on that last point, think of an apple. Now for Hume, an apple is a complex idea. It doesn't seem very complex, it's a reasonably simple object, but it is. It's red, that's one idea. It's roundish, that's another idea. It's green as well. Why? Well, the leaves are green, so it has a leaf, that is a separate idea. Green is a separate idea. There's the taste and the texture of the apple. And in fact, the apple is a bundle of all of these ideas put together. Right? I could go on, actually. There's quite a lot more you could say about the apple. So for Hume, it's important to understand that they're all ideas, and in the sense all ideas are broken up into these simpler ideas, and complex ideas are effectively constituted by their bundles of these simple ideas put together in a specific way. It's so important, the idea of simple and complex ideas. We're going to do a little separate video on that.